I need to write this down before it slips again, before the words on the page rearrange themselves into something I don't recognize. Last night, reality cracked, and I swear I saw myself on the other side of the mirror. Not a reflection, but another me. A me that was writing the very same words I'm scratching out right now. The journal I found, scorched and blackened, had my initials carved into it. Page after page of warnings, rules, and memories that I thought were happening for the first time, but were already written, already lived. The truth I kept running from is pressing in. I am not discovering these rules. I am repeating them. I am repeating everything. Cycle 48. That number has carved itself into my chest, along with the burning sigil that still glows beneath my skin. My other self whispered it with calm certainty, and the journal screamed it in frantic ink. Cycle 48 is the last. If that's true, then I'm not just fighting for my sanity. I'm fighting against the collapse of everything that's kept me alive this long. Pixel hasn't stopped watching the mirror since it happened. She sits by the doorway, fur standing, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, her gaze locked on the glass like she's guarding me from something inside it. Maybe she knows. Maybe she's always known. She was there in the journal too. Pixel is the anchor. Protect her. I keep telling myself she's just a cat, that I saved her from the streets years ago and that's all. But the way she growled when my reflection lifted its head and smiled makes me think otherwise. She's not just here with me. She's here for me, though I don't understand how. The apartment doesn't feel like mine anymore. The walls ripple sometimes, as though breathing. The hallway door has a new frame of iron beneath the wood, ribs and vertebrae stitched into the edges if I stare too long. The ceiling light flickers not with electricity but with a pulse, as though the bulb contains a heart instead of a filament. And the mirror. I covered it with a sheet, but I can still hear scratching from behind it at night, like pen on paper, like the other me never stopped writing. When I close my eyes, I can see the words bleeding into fresh pages, even though the journal lies shut beside me. Stop resisting. We only need one of us to remember. That line hasn't left my head. I'm trying to piece it together. Every warning, every law, every face I was told not to trust, they weren't traps left by someone else. They were survival notes, left by me, passed down from cycle to cycle, each version of myself trying to keep the next alive. But somewhere along the line, the pattern broke. Some of us didn't follow the rules. Some of us answered the mirror, opened the doors, trusted the wrong faces. And when that happened, the gates twisted tighter, the cycles closed in, and whatever experiment I've been trapped in grew more precise. They're not watching me. They're watching us. And I think they've been doing it for longer than I can even measure. The aftermath of last night is still vibrating in me. I hear my mother's voice in the knock on the door, even though she's been gone for years. I see my own face smiling back at me when I try to drink from the kitchen glass. I can't trust what's familiar. That's what the rules mean. Do not trust the faces you know. But if I can't trust that, then how do I trust Pixel? How do I trust myself? Maybe I can't. Maybe that's the whole point. The journal lies on the table where I left it, shut tight, but I know that when I open it again, there will be new words waiting for me. Things I haven't lived yet but already wrote. The rules are shifting. I can feel it, like whispers pressing against the back of my skull, like unseen hands trying to guide me toward something I'm not meant to survive. The silence between those whispers is worse. It's the silence that tells me I'm alone, that this confession will end up on a page in the mirror where another version of me will read it and curse me for failing again. I don't know how much longer I can hold onto what's mine, what's real. My apartment, my cat, even my body feels borrowed. Maybe that's what the word cycle really means. This is just another turn of the wheel, and when it stops, everything I've written, everything I've been, will belong to the next me. But I don't want to pass this on anymore. I want to end it, and if Cycle 48 truly is the last, then maybe that means I can. I don't know if I'm writing this for myself or for whoever comes after me. I don't know if there will be an after me. But if someone is listening, if someone is reading, then hear this. The mirror is not showing you. The mirror is showing the one who remembers, and he is closer than you think. I thought the rules were stable. Brutal, yes, incomprehensible sometimes, but at least they were consistent. Do not count the gates aloud. Do not open what cannot be closed. Do not trust the faces you know. They were anchors, like coordinates carved into the map of a nightmare, things I could cling to while everything else dissolved. But tonight, I watched them change. I left the journal on the table, locked inside a drawer I thought I wouldn't touch again. When I opened it, the ink was still wet. Words were rearranging themselves on the page as though the book was alive. Sentences I had memorized from the night before blurred, faded, and then rewrote into something new. The page shivered under my fingers, and for the first time, I saw rules I hadn't read before. Rule 1. Never write what you don't want to remember. Rule 2. If the mirror calls your name, do not answer. Rule 3. Burn what carries your face. The journal trembled in my hands as if it wanted me to take these seriously, as if the ink itself was screaming. I stared at them, cold sweat pooling at the back of my neck, and the sick realization sank in. The rules weren't just warnings. They were instructions, tailored to me, adjusted for every cycle. That's why they shift. Each time one of us fails, the rules adapt, forcing the next version closer to something inevitable. The rules aren't a shield. They're a funnel. I tested the first one in my head. Never write what you don't want to remember. I had been writing everything, every confession, every detail, thinking it was survival, thinking I was carving truth into permanence. But what if that was the trap? Every word I write is remembered, not just by me, but by whatever is orchestrating this. Every scribble is an anchor, keeping the cycle from collapsing. If I stopped writing, maybe it would all fade, or maybe I'd vanish with it. The second rule was worse. If the mirror calls your name, do not answer. I'd already failed that. Last night when the glass rippled and the other me whispered, I answered. I didn't mean to. It slipped out, just a breath, but it was enough to crack the barrier, enough to show me the reverse apartment, the wall of photographs, the watchers. That rule was a warning sent too late, because I had already broken it. I kept turning the page, hoping for guidance, hoping for forgiveness. Then I saw the third. Burn what carries your face. That one made me sick. I thought of the photographs nailed to the walls of the reverse apartment, each one of me in different states of terror, each one stamped with a cycle number. I thought of the Polaroid I had found wedged into the subway tracks 2 nights ago, the one I had shoved into my pocket without thinking. I thought of the reflection in the mirror, writing in sync with my hand. How many versions of me are carrying my face, and what would burning them do? Would it save me or erase me? Pixel jumped onto the table as I sat frozen, her paw batting at the corner of the journal. The page flipped without my touch, and more writing appeared beneath the rules, scrawled in the same jagged hand but in thicker, darker strokes, as though carved into the paper. You know what happens when you ignore them. You already saw it. You already lived it. Don't make me write this again. I almost vomited. It was my handwriting, but I had no memory of putting it there. The air grew heavy. The apartment dimmed. On the wall above the mirror, faint words began to form in the plaster, glowing as if lit from behind. Remember the rules, or we will remember for you. My throat closed. I slammed the journal shut, but the letters burned in my mind, impossible to shake. I tried to convince myself it was hallucination, a bleed-through of exhaustion, but then I remembered the watchers whispering, "We remember for you." The connection was too sharp, too deliberate. If the rules change, it means I change them. Not me here, not me now, but the me that failed last time, the me that lived this exact night and didn't survive it. He left the edits, and I'm the one forced to read them. I grabbed a pen and hovered over the page. If the first rule was true, then writing would make things permanent. If I wrote the wrong thing, I'd trap myself. If I wrote the right thing, maybe I could shift the cycle, bend it away from what was waiting. My hand shook so violently the pen clattered onto the table. Pixel hissed, her back arched, staring at the mirror again. From inside the glass I heard it. My name, Michael. My other self whispered it softly, coaxing, tender, almost kind. The second rule screamed in my skull, do not answer. But I wanted to. I wanted to more than anything. I pressed my hands to my ears and backed away, but the journal fluttered open on its own, the pages rifling until it stopped on a blank one. Fresh ink bled into existence. Answer, and the gate opens wider. Resist, and the cycle resets. Choose. It wasn't just warning me, it was offering me a choice. And I realized then that the rules weren't there to keep me alive. They were there to keep me in play. A game with no exit, a cycle with no end. The mirror whispered again, louder this time, and I bit my tongue until I tasted blood to stop myself from replying. The journal shuddered violently, and another line carved itself onto the page. He already answered. Don't make it worse. I dropped it and stumbled back, shaking. The rules weren't just shifting, they were rewriting themselves while I was watching. And each rewrite felt like it was closing in, removing options, leaving only one narrow path forward. I had the sickening sense that by the time Cycle 48 ends, there will be only one rule left, and it will be the one I can't follow. The mirror isn't just glass anymore. I know that now. It breathes, it waits, it remembers. Tonight, it began to ripple like water in a pond. Even though the apartment was still and heavy, the air dead with silence. Pixel bolted under the couch the moment it started, her eyes glowing like fragments of broken stars as she hissed at me from the shadows. I wanted to run too, but my body wouldn't move. I could only stand there and watch as the silver surface of the mirror began to melt, sagging like mercury pulled by invisible strings. The whispers grew louder, layered voices all using my name, Michael, over and over, like a chorus rehearsed for centuries. And then one broke through them all, clear and sharp, the same voice I heard last night, my own voice. Michael. It was like being called by a parent across a playground, like hearing your name in a crowd and knowing someone is looking directly at you. The second rule screamed in my skull. If the mirror calls your name, do not answer. But my lips parted anyway. I wanted to resist, I really did, but something about hearing myself from inside the glass unraveled every defense I had left. The voice wasn't threatening, it was kind, gentle, a version of me that hadn't been broken by all this. Maybe that's why I whispered back, almost without thinking. Yes. The mirror. Cracked down the middle, spiderweb lines spreading fast, but instead of shattering it began to draw inward, the fractures sucking like veins feeding a heart. A suction pulled at the air, and I was lifted off my feet. The journal on the table flew open, pages tearing out and spiraling into the mirror's maw, each one bursting into sparks as they crossed the threshold. I grabbed the frame to hold on, but the wood dissolved into ash under my hands, leaving me clawing at nothing. My body folded, stretched, and then the surface swallowed me whole. The sensation of crossing wasn't like falling or drowning. It was like being inverted, my skin turning inside out, my memories twisting into a funnel that jammed itself into my skull. I couldn't tell if I screamed or if the sound I heard was every version of me screaming at once. The world went red, then black, then a pale gray haze that hummed like static. When I landed, it was inside my apartment, but not. The floorboards were reversed, nailed upside down, their nails pointing outward like teeth. The ceiling sagged low, draped with strips of skin-colored wallpaper that pulsed faintly. The lights flickered, not with electricity, but with blood-red sparks that spat from invisible veins strung along the walls. The smell of mold and rot clung to everything, but underneath it was something worse, the sterile sting of hospital disinfectant. I knew instantly this wasn't just a warped copy of my home. This was the reverse apartment, the place the rules had warned about, the place the other me had been writing from. The mirror was still behind me, but now it was a window. On the other side, I could see my apartment, normal and untouched, My own body standing there motionless like a doll, eyes glassy, hands still stretched toward the glass. I tried to scream at it, to bang on the surface, but no sound carried. My reflection didn't move. It just stood there, watching me, mouth curved in the faintest smile. I turned away and saw the walls lined with photographs, hundreds of them. They hung like a gallery, nailed to the pulsing wallpaper with black pins. Each one showed me different clothes, different ages, different cycles. Some were Polaroids, others faded sepia portraits, some glossy modern prints. The first photo was of me as a boy, staring into the mirror with wide, terrified eyes. The last one was blank, a square of photo paper with nothing yet developed, pinned at the very end of the sequence. Above it, scrawled in jagged ink, was the number 48. The photographs whispered as I walked by, each voice mine but not mine, muttering fragments of rules, fragments of warnings. Don't open what can't be closed. Don't answer. Burn it all before they do. The whispers overlapped until I wanted to tear my ears off. My knees buckled and I pressed my palms to my head, but the voices only grew clearer. One rose above the rest. We remember for you. That's when I saw them. The Watchers. Tall, impossibly thin figures peeling themselves out of the corners of the room, black bodies bent at wrong angles, faces blurred except for their eyes, wide, milky, and unblinking. Their necks were twisted backward, yet their gazes still followed me. Their mouths opened and the words came again. We remember for you. The sound wasn't spoken. It was carved directly into my thoughts. I backed into the gallery of photographs and the one marked with 47 fell from the wall. It landed face up on the floor. In it, I saw myself, throat slit, eyes wide open, body sprawled in a room I didn't recognize. I hadn't lived that memory. Not yet. But the image throbbed as though it were happening now, blood dripping from the paper and pooling across the floor. The Watchers bent low, sniffing it like animals. I wanted to wake up. I wanted to claw my way back to the real apartment, to Pixel, to any reality that didn't feel like my head was unraveling from the inside. I ran back to the mirror window and pounded, screaming my own name. My reflection only smiled wider, and then I saw his hand move, separate from mine. He raised the journal and began writing. As he did, the words bled into the wall beside me. Stay. This is where you belong. The suction started again, but not pulling me out, pulling me deeper in. The mirror collapsed behind me, folding into itself until there was nothing left of the world I knew. The Watchers closed in, whispering my name in unison, and the photographs began to peel off the wall one by one, fluttering through the air like dead leaves, wrapping around my body until I couldn't breathe. Each one pressed against my skin burned with the memory it carried, branding me with a death I hadn't lived. My throat filled with screams that weren't mine, cycles bleeding together. And in that suffocating storm of images, a single thought pulsed through me, not mine but ours, a hive-mind echo that rattled every bone in my body. You've always been here. You never left. Cycle 48 is just the remembering. The reverse apartment is wrong in ways that words refuse to carry. Every detail feels stitched from a memory that doesn't quite belong to me. The floor is wet wood, warped like it's been underwater for decades, but every step I take sounds like a hospital monitor, beeping faintly under the boards. The ceiling droops with peeling wallpaper the color of old skin, veins pulsing beneath it. Even the air has weight, pressing into my chest like invisible hands. I can't tell if I'm breathing air or if I'm inhaling someone else's thoughts. The photographs still surround me. Thousands now, not just hundreds, spreading from the walls to the ceiling, dangling from strings of sinew. Everyone shows me. Not one smile, not one moment of peace, just terror, death, or exhaustion. The earlier ones are faint as though they have been copied too many times, but the recent ones are sharp, crisp, and bleeding into the present. When I move, I hear them whisper. Each photo speaks in my voice but not my words. Do not trust, do not count, do not write, do not remember. The words twist until they mean nothing. And then the Watchers move. They are not like shadows or ghosts. They are deliberate, tall, insect-thin figures, spines bending in directions human bones shouldn't bend, their heads facing the wrong way, but their eyes locked forward. Their milky pupils have no lids, no blink. The more I look at them, the more I realize their faces are stretched versions of mine. Not exact copies, but close enough that recognition crawls under my skin like a disease. They whisper in unison without moving their mouths. We remember for you. One of them drifts close. Its body doesn't walk so much as slide, joints bending backward with every step. Its hands are too long, and when it raises one, I see writing carved into its palm, my own handwriting, jagged and frantic. It's not ink, it's carved flesh. The lines spell rules. Rule 2, Rule 5, Rule 7. They've been keeping them etched, holding them in their bodies as though they're the living archive of every cycle. I stumble back and hit the gallery wall. One of the photographs falls at my feet. I pick it up before I can stop myself. It shows me lying in this exact room, throat torn open, the watchers leaning over my body, their fingers pressed into my head like syringes. As I stare, I feel something slick at my own neck. I touch it. My fingers come away red. Pixel's name bursts in my head like a flare. Anchor, protect her. I whisper her name out loud, desperate, like saying it will drag me back to her, back to the real apartment. The watchers hiss, the sound not air but static. The one closest tilts its head, the bones cracking like branches. Pixel is not yours. She is the fragment. Its voice isn't external. It's inside my chest, vibrating through my ribs. I want to run. I turn toward the hallway, but the hall's endless, stretching in both directions like an Escher drawing gone rotten. Each door is marked with a number. At first they make sense. 1, 2, 3. But then they start skipping. 17, 44, 3 again. 6 repeated a dozen times in a row. The numbers burn like they've been branded into the wood. I reach for 1, hoping to find escape, but the doorknob is hot, blistering my palm. The photograph whispers at my feet. Don't open what can't be closed. I yank my hand back before I even think. The watchers follow, silent except for their voices in my mind. They don't chase, they don't rush, they just wait. Every step I take, they're closer, like the space between us doesn't matter. One moment they're across the room, the next they're an inch from my face, breathless but still whispering. Cycle 48, Cycle 48, Cycle 48. I finally scream at them, voice breaking, What do you want from me? They all tilt their heads at once, spines cracking in unison. The photographs on the walls tremble. And then 1,000 voices, all mine, answer together. To remember. To end the remembering. To begin again. The walls ripple like water. Some photographs peel themselves off, spinning in the air, slapping against my chest. Each one burns through my skin, sinking inside me. I convulse on the floor, choking on memories that aren't mine. A subway tunnel collapsing, a girl in white smiling with no mouth, a hospital corridor where my own voice echoed from every room. They pour into me until I'm not just Michael Brennan anymore. I'm 47 failures, layered into one body. When I look up, the watchers are gone. But I know they aren't gone. They're inside me now, wearing me like I'm their photograph. The reverse apartment hums louder, like a machine waking up, gears grinding under the floorboards. The final photograph on the wall, the one labeled 48, begins to develop. Slowly, like Polaroid ink blooming, my face appears. My eyes are closed, my body slumped against the couch, Pixel curled at my feet. Normal, peaceful, almost mundane. But then the photo bleeds red, and my eyes in it snap open. The realization hits me so hard, I collapse again. The watchers don't just record the past, they write the future. The photos are not just memories, they are blueprints. And if Cycle 48 is already printed, then every choice I think I have is nothing but an illusion. Still, I clutch the journal, the one that fell through the mirror with me. Its pages flutter open. On the newest page, in that same handwriting that could be mine or not mine, is a single line. Burn what carries your face. I glance at the photographs, at the journal itself. at the reflection still smiling faintly from the other side of the sealed mirror. My stomach twists. If I obey, I might erase them, or I might erase me. And in the silence that follows, I hear Pixel again, faint and distant, meowing on the other side of reality. The sound shreds me worse than any rule, because it tells me there's still something left to fight for, even if I don't know who or what she really is. The journal wouldn't stop bleeding words. Every time I tried to shut it, the pages forced themselves open, like lungs gasping for air. The phrase repeated over and over, "Burn what carries your face." At first, I thought it was just another warning, but the more I stared at the photographs, the more I felt their weight pressing into me, filling me, suffocating me. Each photo pulsed like a vein. Each image whispered its own ending. And every ending was mine. The watchers were gone, but not gone. Their absence was worse than their presence because I could feel them inside me, sifting through my memories, picking apart which pieces belonged to them. My hands trembled as I held one of the fallen photographs. It showed me asleep on the couch, Pixel curled on my chest, a peaceful scene that felt impossible. But when I blinked, blood smeared across the image, and my body in the picture split, open from throat to stomach. My face stayed calm, my eyes still closed as if death was no more disruptive than a nap. Something inside me snapped. The rules were chains. Every cycle, every version of me obeyed them, bent under them, and still ended here, in this place, with these faces. The journal wasn't my lifeline. It was my leash. And if every Michael before me had failed, maybe the only way to win was to fail differently. I grabbed the photograph with both hands. My throat tightened as I remembered the line, "Burn what carries your face." But instead of fire, I tore. I ripped the photo in half, jagged edges splitting my printed face into two uneven fragments. The world convulsed. The floorboards screamed, every nail screeching like metal dragged across glass. The reverse apartment twisted violently, walls folding inward, then outward, then inside out, spilling guts of wood and plaster. The photographs exploded off the walls like shrapnel, hundreds slashing through the air, their edges sharper than blades. They cut into my skin as they passed, thin paper slices that burned like acid, leaving trails of fire across my arms, my chest, my face. Blood sprayed, mixing with the raining photographs until I couldn't tell what was mine and what belonged to the cycle. And then the watchers returned. They didn't slide this time. They lurched. Their limbs cracked and snapped with every step, faces stretched further, milky eyes bulging until veins burst in their sockets. Their voices weren't whispers anymore. They were screams, layered, multiplied, shaking the reverse apartment down to its foundation. "You broke it. You broke it. You broke it." I stumbled backward, clutching the torn halves of the photograph, and I realized too late what I had done. The watchers didn't want me to burn the photographs because fire erases. They wanted me to burn them because fire purifies. Fire closes the loop. Tearing didn't erase, it multiplied. The halves of the photo began to twitch in my hands. At first, they just fluttered, like paper caught in a draft. Then they grew warm. Then they pulsed. And then the fragments began to grow. Flesh seeped from the torn edges, blooming into veins, muscle, skin. In seconds, I was holding two twitching, bleeding copies of myself, their faces half-formed, their mouths opening and closing like newborn animals gasping for air. Their eyes snapped open, my eyes, and they screamed in unison. The watchers fell silent. Every milky eye turned toward the things in my hands. And then, with an eagerness that made my stomach twist, they began to kneel. One by one, these towering abominations bent their broken spines until their faces pressed to the warped floorboards. They weren't watching me anymore. They were worshiping. The two half-Michaels writhed, pulling free from my grasp, their bodies dripping raw flesh onto the floor. They stumbled upright, skeletal, unfinished, but alive in the worst way possible. One clutched its throat like it remembered dying. The other pressed its hands over its eyes, as if it had seen too much. They looked at me, their mouths stretching into smiles that were more cuts than expressions. One of them rasped through a throat that hadn't fully grown. "You shouldn't have done that." The journal opened by itself on the floor. Fresh ink bled across the page in frantic strokes. Breaking the rule is worse than keeping it. Now they won't forget. Now they never forget. The reverse apartment convulsed again. Doors along the endless hallway banged open, one after another, as though something had been waiting inside all this time. Darkness poured out, thick and alive, filling the space, swallowing the walls, the ceiling, the floor. The photographs caught fire, igniting in waves, but the flames didn't burn them away. The fire only illuminated what had always been written on their backs: dates. Each one carried a year, spanning decades, centuries. My face has been remembered far longer than my lifetime. The two half-born versions of me staggered into the hallway, their bodies solidifying with every step. The watchers followed on hands and knees, whispering prayers in a language that sounded like my own voice reversed. And I realized with horror what I had unleashed. I hadn't broken the cycle. I had bred new ones. I tried to run, but the floor melted beneath me, swallowing my legs up to the knees. The wood was warm, sticky, like blood clotted into boards. The journal's pages spun faster and faster until one flew free and slapped across my face. The words carved themselves into my skin, burning hotter than fire. Cycle 49 begins. I tore it off, screaming, but the mark remained. My reflection on the other side of the mirror was gone. In its place were two new reflections, the half-born, now whole, watching me with the same faint smile I had seen 100 times before. Pixel's meow broke through the madness, faint but desperate, from somewhere outside this nightmare. I clung to it, the only real sound left in my universe. But the voices of the watchers drowned it out. No anchor, no escape, no forgetting. I had thought breaking a rule would free me, but in my hands, torn fragments still dripping with my own flesh, I knew the truth. I hadn't escaped. I had made the cage infinite. The fire didn't stop. It spread along the photographs, consuming the walls, the floor, even the ceiling. But the flames weren't destroying anything. They were revealing. Each photo, once it burned through, left behind words etched deep into the air, glowing like wounds across reality itself. Names, dates, rules, and always the same handwriting. Mine. I staggered backward, choking on smoke that wasn't smoke, but memories turned to ash, and my hand brushed against the journal again. Its cover was warm, pulsing like an organ, begging me to open it. I didn't want to, but my fingers moved anyway. The pages weren't blank, not anymore. They weren't shifting like before either. They were fixed, carved as if by fire into the paper. And every line was a confession, written by me, but not me. The handwriting was mine, yes, but the voice behind it was fractured, distorted, like I was hearing it from the other end of time. It began. Cycle 1. You thought the rules would save you. They didn't. Cycle 2. You tried to burn it all. You couldn't. Cycle 3. You trusted the mirror. That was the mistake. Cycle 4. You killed yourself early. That didn't work either. I flipped faster, my heart smashing itself against my ribs. Cycle 11, Cycle 23, Cycle 36, all listed, each with a short confession, each one failure. Some were just one line. I forgot too soon. They remembered faster than I did. Pixel is not what you think she is. By the time I reached Cycle 47, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the book. That entry was longer, desperate. You have to understand, you're not escaping, you're writing. Every word pins the memory down, and they feed on it. Stop writing, stop remembering, but you won't, you never do. That's why I'm here again. That's why you will be too. The last entry was Cycle 48. My cycle. The words had been carved so deep they tore through the page. I broke it, I made more of us. The watchers worship them. The next cycle won't matter. The cage is infinite now. And then, scrawled beneath it, fresher than the rest, so fresh the ink glistened, Cycle 49 begins. My vision blurred. My breath tore in shallow bursts. I dropped the journal, but the words didn't leave me. They floated around me, carved into the smoke, into my skin, into my mind. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to scream that this wasn't mine, that some monster had forged my hand to write its gospel. But deep down, I knew the truth. Every stroke was mine. Every cycle, every failure, every desperate attempt to rewrite the rules, it had always been me. There was no one else to blame. The rules didn't trap me. I wrote them. The watchers rose again in the flickering firelight, heads bowed, hands scraping across the floor as they moved closer. They didn't whisper this time, they chanted my name over and over, not as a warning, as worship. Their voices pounded in my skull like drums. Michael, Michael, Michael. The half-born versions of me, the things I had torn into being, stood at the edges of the fire, fully formed now. One still pressed its hands over its eyes, the other clutching its throat, but both smiled. They didn't need to speak. Their presence was enough. They weren't here to replace me. They were here to inherit me. I staggered toward the mirror, hoping, praying it would still be a way out. But the surface was solid, just glass, cracked down the middle like it had always been broken. My reflection stared back at me, not smiling now, just watching, waiting. In its hands was another journal, and as I watched, it began to write. The words appeared across my skin as fresh burns. He still doesn't understand. I slammed my fists into the glass until my knuckles split, blood smearing across the cracks. The reflection didn't flinch. Behind me, the chanting grew louder. The watchers were almost upon me. The photographs burned brighter, their dates stretching forward now, past the present, past this moment, into futures I couldn't comprehend. And the truth crashed into me like a wave of knives. The cycle isn't just memory. It's creation. Every time I write, every time I confess, I lay the track for the next version to follow. I'm not the victim of this loop. I am its architect. Pixels meow pierce the chaos, faint and trembling, but real. Not memory. Not echo. Real. For a heartbeat I clung to it, the only sound that reminded me of life outside the rules, outside the fire, outside myself. And then another sound joined it. A second meow. Then a third. The air split with echoes of her voice, multiplying, overlapping, until it wasn't pixel anymore, but a chorus, an anchor turned into a mirror of the watchers. I dropped to my knees, blood and ash coating my hands, and whispered into the glass, "Please, tell me how to end it." My reflection paused, pen hovering over the page, and then, slowly, it wrote, "End yourself before you begin again." The mirror shivered. The watchers stopped their chant. Every photograph turned blank at once, every future erased. For the first time since this nightmare began, silence fell. But it wasn't peace. It was the silence of a held breath, a universe waiting to see if I would follow through. I looked at the broken glass, at my own ruined face staring back at me, and realized what the journal had been telling me from the start. The rules weren't warnings. They were instructions. Instructions I had left for myself. Instructions I never had the courage to follow. And as the fire dimmed, as the reverse apartment folded into darkness, the last words burned across the page of the journal, searing into my eyes, impossible to unsee. There is no they, there is only you. There,